Welcome. Welcome to our call. Welcome to this moment. And what I would like to do to start out with is have us all get here. It's a very good thing to be where we are. I think the most challenging part about this incredibly challenging time, cataclysmic, huge, once in our lifetime time, is when we distance from ourselves, when we separate from ourselves. So let's come back now. Let's just take a few minutes now and come back. And how do we do that? We do that by feeling your feet on the floor, feeling those feet on the floor, feeling your butt in your chair. If you're actually sitting in a chair, if you're standing up like I am, then you just feel your feet on the floor and you become aware that you are where you are. In order to take in, absorb, listen to what we're going to be talking about in this next little while, somebody has to be there to take it in. So we want you to be here. So then take a look around. Now what I'm going to do right now is in order to take a look around, I'm going to look to my right, I'm going to look to my left. I'm going to look up. And even if I've been in this room, which I have been thousands of times, I'm going to notice what it's like to be here in this room now. So I'm just going to feel myself right here, feel my body. Wiggle my right hand, wiggle my left hand. You just want to come back into this body. So many of us during this time have left ourselves. Many of us haven't, but many of us have. So we just want to take this time to come back. And breathe, really, really breathe. Take a belly breath. Feel yourself in that belly. A belly breath. Good. Really, really good. Welcome, and welcome yourself to your sweet body, to this home that's actually your home. Your home. Welcome yourself. Good. That's good. So I have so appreciated the questions that I've gotten. I've gotten pages and pages of questions. I've read through all of them. Before I start answering them or addressing them, I'd like to say a couple of words, well, maybe more than a couple of words about this time we find ourselves in right now. It is a collectively, and this is what is so staggering about this time, aside from the pandemic that's coming through, aside from all of the news that we're getting, we are collectively going through something together. This is affecting all of us. We can feel that it affects us, every single one of us. And so it's a shared experience. We haven't actually had anything like that before. Most of us in our lifetimes, my mother has had, she lived through World War II. She lived through the Depression. She has had that, but we haven't. Unless, of course, you did. Unless you are as old as my mother or a little younger. She's 91. Collectively going through something that ties us together, that we're all experiencing. And so we can actually all help each other in that way. We can feel the community of human beings. We can feel that connection with all of us. I see this time as a time, well, I should back up for a second. If you have issues with food, and I think probably everybody who's listening to me has some kind of sensitivity to or challenge about food, then of course that's going to come up right now. It's going to come up now. I find myself, and I haven't really eaten compulsively for years. I find myself when I walk back in the house, sometimes the first thought will be, oh, what can I eat now? And I realize, wow, I'm thinking about what I can eat. I'm not hungry. What's happening? Well, we're in a new time. We're in an uncertain time. We're in a time of stress for many of us who are at home and are not used to being at home with, if we have young kids, we're living with our kids 24/7. One person wrote to me, said she's drowning in all of this togetherness that she has with her two children. So we're living in a new time. We are next to our refrigerator or near our refrigerator 24/7, or else when we're awake, maybe now when we're sleeping. And we're not used to that. Yes, I've seen the posts that say we need to learn social distancing from our refrigerator. But what I want to say about that is, of course, issues with food are going to come up. Of course they are. Once we have been sensitized, once we have developed issues or challenges, sensitivities about our relationship with food, once we've used food as a way to comfort or numb or express ourselves, we've got that habit, we've got that muscle. And even though, like myself, I haven't really been working out that muscle for quite a long time, over 30 years, it's amazing to see myself with the thought of, oh, what can I eat now? And that to me is eating as entertainment. That's what I call it. Eating as entertainment. And it's also some old voices coming up. Now, I know from being with those voices and not taking them seriously, but actually seriously enough to make room for them, I know they are old voices. And instead of acting them out, I can say, oh, honey, I hear that you want to eat right now, or I hear that you're thinking about food. Isn't that interesting? Are you hungry? No. Okay, what else can you do? So this is a time to talk to yourself. But mostly, and I'll get to that in a second, I want you to know that, yes, of course, issues with food are going to come up, and I'd like to normalize them. Instead of getting freaked out about them, instead of so many people being worried about what's coming up about food, or if you find yourself overeating, shaming and blaming and criticizing yourself, normalize that. Yes, this is what's coming up now. This is once in our lifetime, at least so far, time. Yes, old voices are going to come up. Yes, ways we've used to comfort and numb and protect and express ourselves are going to come up. Okay, fine. Much of the pain that I heard or read about in these questions that I have came from the stories that you're telling yourself about what's coming up. Stories about anxiety, uncertainty, loneliness, eating too much. They are, in other words, interpretations that you're making and then smashing yourself with, hitting yourself with. For example, let me just give you an example of this. I have a troubled history of compulsive eating, always judging my appearance, sometimes positively, sometimes very negatively. I have touched real peace in my life using your guidelines, but I've never managed to fully sustain this intuitive way of being with food because my binge brain, judgment, and fear outsmart me. I slip, I judge, and I feel no choice but to return to rigidity. Here's what I want to say about that. She slips. That's a judgment. I slip. I do things I shouldn't do. I fall off the cliff. That is not normalizing. That is not making room for, okay, I've eaten too much. Now what? Then she says, I judge. I slip, I judge, and then I return to rigidity. So notice that progression. I eat too much and then I judge. And it is the judgment, it is what you're telling yourself that then freaks you out, would freak anybody else out. I can't believe you did that. What's the matter with you? And if you do that, then you are going to return to rigidity, because then you feel like there are two choices here. Either I have to stay on the straight and narrow, or I binge. And straight and narrow means returning to rigidity. What I want to say to you is to welcome, or at the very least, acknowledge the voices that you feel. Acknowledge the stories that you're telling yourself. Acknowledge the anxiety. Somebody else wrote me about anxiety. I don't know what to do. I feel so much anxiety right now about the future, about uncertainty, about what's going to happen, about being out of control. So this is a thing that we're actually getting to see now, that somehow we've managed to keep over here because of the way we've lived our lives. We're never in control. I mean, we have this illusion that we're in control of what happens to us. We're in control of what happens to other people. If we worry enough, if we get anxious enough, if we plan for the future enough, if we run fast enough, then we can prevent that from happening. I used to, when I was a kid, feel like if I thought about every catastrophic thing that happened, and if I planned for every catastrophic thing that happened, who I would call, what I would do, where I would go, then somehow that would form a protection around me and it wouldn't happen, or else I'd know what to do when it did happen. That was a way of feeling in control, of being in a situation that I was actually out of control of, which was what was going on around me in my childhood and in me with my feelings. What we're seeing now is that we're actually not in control. Nobody's been in control of this virus spreading. Yes, there were things, many things apparently, that we could have done social distancing beforehand, had a lot more tests available, all of that. And then we hear that and we blame people because they didn't, because if only they had, then we wouldn't be feeling this. And that's our main thing. If only this had happened, then I wouldn't be feeling what I'm feeling now. Or if only I had done this, then I wouldn't be feeling that. That is the illusion of being in control. We're not. And if there was ever a time to realize that we've never been in control, really, of what happens, yes, what we are responsible for is what we do with our thoughts. We're not responsible for our thoughts. They come and go. They're not personal, they're conditioned. 98% of our thoughts are repetitive thoughts, according to brain scientists, that we've thought hundreds of times before. What we're in control of is how we relate to those. What do we do with those thoughts? Are we kind to ourselves? Do we blame ourselves harshly? What do we do? Now, I want to read you another notice from somebody, another question. How do you keep coming back to yourself when you really, really want to escape yourself during this pandemic? How do you feel your feelings? when you want to numb out and escape because of the unknown and businesses closing up, people wearing masks, not leaving home without hand sanitizer, and your family continuing their essential work in harm's way. How do you feel your feelings when you want to numb out and escape? How do you feel your feelings? So the truth is that we always are feeling our feelings. We feel them, and then we make oftentimes a very quick decision not to feel them. How do we do that? We numb ourselves with food. And then after we've done that, and I've said this so many times to all of you, we still are feeling what we're feeling, but now we've doubled our suffering because we're also feeling whatever we feel about having just eaten. How do you feel your feelings? Notice right now. Oh, I just remembered I was going to ask you to do something, and it's not too late for you to do that, even though we're a little into the call. Take a moment now, and then we'll get to feeling our feelings. Take a moment now and tune in to what your intention is for this call. Why are you here? Why are you on this call? Why are you listening to me? What do you want? Do you want to get in touch with yourself? Do you want to feel what's going on? Do you want me to fix it for you? Now, you don't need to be ashamed if you want somebody else to fix it. I spent years wanting somebody else to do it. You might want to do that. What's your intention? What do you really, really want? Go inside. Because I'm going to ask you once you're inside, what's going on in terms of your feelings right now? Because your body is the repository of your feelings, and your body will also speak to you about what it wants. Now, this is different than what your mind wants. So when you feel your body, and let your mind come down into your body, what do you want from being on this call, from being with me? What do you want? What's your intention? To come home to yourself? To have an idea about what to do with food? To know what to do with your anxiety or your loneliness? To be kind to yourself? What is it? Notice what it is. And then notice how you're being with yourself right at this very moment. Are you pushing yourself? Are you judging yourself? Have you already thought, oh, I'm never going to do this. What's the point? If you treated yourself in this moment ever so kindly, if you were treating yourself with kindness right now, how would you be orienting to yourself? Okay, so just notice that. Intention and orientation. Take a breath. Take a breath. You know, what's true about this pandemic and the time that we have here is that we finally, I'm not talking about the people on the front lines to whom we bow down. We bow down to their courage, their willingness, their stamina, their persistence. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Us who are at home, I'm not sure that's grammatically correct, but it's we who are at home. and are sequestering in place, sheltering in place, we have the chance now to do what we hardly ever give ourselves the chance to do. We have the chance to be with ourselves. We have the chance, if we have issues with food, to actually be with what's standing in the way between us and ease and freedom. I'm not talking about what's standing in the way between us and losing weight, us and being at our perfect body size. I'm talking about what occludes our hearts, what haunts us. Because in the end, the issues with food are about what haunts us, that we haven't really met, that we haven't welcomed, because it is from those patterns, those issues, those feelings that we turn to food. No, I'm not talking about eating as entertainment, even though that's an old habit pattern. I'm talking about we have the time now, the once in a lifetime time. Do we know how long this is going to last? No. Is it going to last another 3 weeks? Another 3 months? Another 6 months? We don't know. And part of the balance here is living with uncertainty. But as I said before, uncertainty is much like the belief, the illusion of being in control. We're always living in uncertainty. We don't know on a given day when we're not sheltering in place, if when we get in our car, some driver is going to crash right into us. I've been in 3 car accidents. And although when I criticize, I try not to, very nicely, my husband's driving, he's never been in a car accident. He'll turn to me and he'll say, who's been in the car accidents around here? Yes, it's me, although they actually weren't my fault, which I try to tell him. But I wasn't in control of being on a 2-lane road and having another driver, when I rounded a blind curve, be in my lane. I wasn't in control of the person who ran the stop sign and rammed right into me. We're not in control. So the lack of certainty, the lack of control, the anxiety that comes up when we're not in control. And what is anxiety? The gap between now and then. Anxiety is a result of the stories we tell ourselves about the gap between now and then. What's going to happen? What if this lasts a long time? What if I never go back to work? What if I don't have the money to stay in this apartment, to share this apartment, to pay my mortgage? What if we scare ourselves to death? We'd rather be scared to death than live with uncertainty. But actually, if you feel into uncertainty, what is it? In your body, it's, I don't know what's going to happen. That's what uncertainty is. I don't know. What if you surrender? Or another way of saying that is let go of the need to be in control and have everything certain, and actually face what's actually here, which is uncertainty. Then it's just uncertainty. It feels a particular way in your body. Maybe it feels fuzzy. Maybe it feels like clouds. Maybe it feels like your stomach drops, but so your stomach drops. Maybe it clenches. Maybe there's a clench in your heart. Okay, you can be with that. You can welcome that. There's nothing that you can't feel. Now, if you have a history of shock trauma and abuse, then this is often helpful to be done with support, because we don't want to re-trigger the abuse and the trauma. For those people without a history of trauma or abuse, when you're able to lean back into what you're feeling, then it's what you're feeling. And this is the time to do that because you've got the time. I heard a snippet of a talk by Jack Kornfield the other day. This was actually a couple of weeks ago before people were sheltering in place. And he was talking to a very large group via Zoom in China, all of whom were sheltering in place and were isolated. And he said to them, well, we have a group of hundreds of people right here at Spirit Rock who have paid a lot of money to be isolating themselves on retreat, and you get to do it for free. And so that's also how you can look at this. You get to have time to be with what haunts you and drives you to food. How do you do that? By letting it be here, by acknowledging it. Oh, this is what I'm feeling. By welcoming it, by treating it like you would treat a small child crying on the side of the road who's saying, I'm lonely, I'm anxious, I'm scared, I want to be with people. You don't kick that child. I use that analogy a lot, but it's a perfect analogy. You don't hand that kid an ice cream cone. You say, honey, I'm here. I can take care of you. Come, let's hear whatever is going on. And then you do that to yourself. Here, sweetheart, what's happening? Yes, there's loneliness. I feel that. But I want to also remind you, and this is the adult I'm talking to, not the adult to the child, that the real loneliness is when you socially distant yourself from your own heart. That's where it really gets lonely because there's no one home. So, all right, I want to read you something else. Another perspective. I'm really enjoying this time. I'm grateful that I have a job and can work from home. I have so much more time to do the things that I enjoy now that I don't have to commute. I'm an environmental scientist and I love my work, but for the first time, I feel my life doesn't revolve around it. But I'm feeling guilty. Of course, I have the occasional bout of fear, but I'm doing well overall. Of course, I don't wish for people to be sick, but I wouldn't mind if things were closed for a bit. That thought makes me feel guilty. I feel guilty that I'm enjoying this time and that people are dying. Businesses are shutting down. People are unemployed. So I feel guilty and I feel helpless. I feel selfish. Please help me resolve my feelings. So here's what I want to say about that. Peace and calm begin with you. Thich Nhat Hanh, when I spent time with him years ago in his retreat center in the south of France, would tell a story. And I don't remember the details of the story. I just remember the large strokes. And that is when a lot of people were in a boat crossing a very rocky river. If everybody panicked, the boat capsized. People went down and drowned. If there was one person in the boat who was able to stay calm, everybody else was also able to stay calm. It's not only that the virus is contagious, it's also that peace is contagious, that calm is contagious, that serenity is contagious, that joy and gratitude are contagious. You can be that. If you're feeling that, I'm not asking you to jump over your feelings. As I said before, we need to welcome those, but I am saying there is something as contagious as the virus, and that is your own calm presence. Here's something that I read this morning in the New Yorker. Images from my childhood keep coming back to me. This is by somebody named Olga. It's a Polish name. I can't quite pronounce it. Toka CZUK. I'll just call her Olga. I'm sorry, Olga, that I can't pronounce your name. Even though many of my family came from Poland, I still don't know how to pronounce Polish words. Images from my childhood keep coming back to me. There was so much more time then, and it was possible to waste it, and it was possible to kill time. Just spending hours staring out the window, observing the ants, or lying under the table and imagining the table to be the ark. Reading the encyclopedia, there was time for that. Might it not be the case that we have returned to a normal rhythm of life now? That it isn't the virus, that it isn't that the virus is a disruption of the norm, but rather exactly the reverse. That the hectic world before the virus arrived was abnormal. And she asked that as a question. That the hectic world before the virus was abnormal. That the way that we ran around, distracted ourselves, felt like we were missing something if we didn't say yes to every invitation or to many invitations. The amount of stimulation and overload, and I'll talk about internet overload in a moment because a few of you asked me about that as well. I want to address this. The question that somebody asked about feeling guilty and feeling selfish because she's actually enjoying this time, and what Olga says about time from our childhoods when there was enough time to waste and enough time to kill, where we could just sit around, lay around for hours on end watching ants. I heard a talk recently by Elizabeth Gilbert, and it was a lovely talk. And in it, she mentioned that when hunting lions was allowed a very long time ago in Africa, the people who were adept at it would go, the trackers basically, would go, and the first thing they would do is sit under a tree for hours and look like they were doing nothing. Many times their eyes were closed or half closed. They just sat there in dream time, basically. They weren't sleeping, but they were open. They took the time to not rush and distract and feel under pressure that they had to perform and achieve and accomplish. Otherwise, the people that hired them might get angry. They just sat there for as long as it took under the tree until they knew from somewhere inside them where the lion was. Listening, looking like you're doing nothing. As every person who writes a book, that would include me. No, every person knows that when you look like you're doing nothing, What's happening is that you're allowing ideas and dreams from the unconscious to come bubbling up. When you're gardening or walking or cutting your toenails or in the shower or staring out into space, now is that time. Now is the time to give yourself the time, because you have been given that time. You have been given that time. That's a gift. Now, there are 1,000 ways, I understand, where this is not a gift for people who are sick. I have 2 friends in New York who have been very, very sick from the virus, sicker than they've ever been. They're beginning to get better. If you've read my Facebook or Instagram post from the last couple of days, Matt had a very close friend, his oldest friend in the world since high school, just died of the virus. And we are both so sad and just weeping from that, letting the grief wash through. In spite or in addition or on top of that, the fact that you've been given time to be with yourself can be considered a gift, or as I call it, a portal to tenderness. You can, after all, learn how to be tender with yourself. This is a really big thing, because time after time after time through these questions, and in the more than 35 years that I've been doing this work, meaning working with myself and working with other people, I would say the main theme, or one of the main themes that comes through over and over and over again, is the harshness with which we talk to ourselves, which then leads directly to using food to counter that harshness, which then leads to dieting to counter the fact that we've used food. You know, a lot of times people refer to the eating guidelines that I wrote years ago, which I've renamed or sometimes call If Love Could Speak to You. And they interpret those to mean all hell can break loose. Intuitive eating means whatever I want when I want it. And that just simply is not true. One of the guidelines, and this is more important, or as important now as it ever was, is to be in touch with your body, to listen to this body of yours. Now, does this mean, and I got quite a few questions about this, does this mean that you have no structure at all? Does this mean that you, as some people said, I had a structure, now that structure has gone out the window, now I don't know whether it's okay to restructure because having a structure actually makes me feel like I'm on a diet? I would counter that. I really would say that when you tune in to yourself, and especially now, and this body, having some kind of structure every day is a good idea. What do I mean by structure? I mean that there are certain things that you do every day. There are certain things that you don't let go by. Why? Because they nourish you. Why? Because they bring you pleasure. When we distance from ourselves, we forget about all of that. We just feel empty. We feel numb. We feel wooden. We don't know that there's anybody home. When we come back to ourselves, we can ask ourselves, what brings me pleasure? And in a bigger way, with a bigger umbrella, what nourishes me? For myself, I know there are certain things that I do pretty much every day. I won't say no matter what, because I never say never and always, but I would say almost all the time. I get up, obviously, I open my eyes, I look around the room, I feel some kind of, wow, I woke up. Isn't that great? Here I am. I meditate. And why do I do that? Because it allows me to be in touch with myself. It allows me to feel myself. I'm coming out of a night of dreams. I want to just sense what's here. So I sense that. When I'm done, I get up, I start moving around, I move this body. I move my body. Now, sometimes it's just a couple of little movements that I do. Sometimes it's a walk that I take, but I move my body again to be in touch with my body. I also know, as some of you have said, and let me just see what this person says. She says, how do I tune in to know what food my body wants and needs? I'm so worried about calories that tuning into what my body needs is fraught with landmine. I feel like my body wants beef stew. I know it wants and needs good nourishment, and that I can't expect it to thrive under these conditions if I only eat Cheetos, so I am eating vegetables and fruit. There was so much chatter in my mind, I find it hard to tune into my body. And that's what we're talking about in terms of listening to what this body wants and allowing it to have some kind of structure. So writing it down, really listening and writing down, what does your body love? Not your mind. I read an article in the New York Times recently saying that processed foods like Cheetos and Hamburger Helper and SpaghettiOs and canned raviolis, potato chips, all of those things are making a comeback because they're comfort foods, because people ate them in childhood and they're trying to go back to their childhood by eating Cheetos and Sara Lee cake. Well, yeah, I used to eat Sara Lee cake too. I scraped all the icing off and then I put the top back and I put it back in the refrigerator and pretended that it was brand new. Or my mother scraping the inside out of the Oreos, sticking them back together, ew, and putting them back. That's almost as bad as what I did. Saying that you're going back to your childhood because you need comfort foods really brings up the question, what do you need comfort for? What's coming up that you need to eat Cheetos to comfort yourself about? That's what I'm saying you can feel directly. Does your body want food like Cheetos and potato chips and Sara Lee icing? Well, your mind might be listening to this as I say this and say, yeah, I want that. After, of course, I wipe it down and I go to the grocery store and I sanitize my hands and I sanitize this and I sanitize that. And then I bring it into the house and then I open the thing and then I take the icing and go, yum. And then how does your body feel? That's your mind. As if you could bring back childhood, and many of us have no desire to bring back childhood, but for some people who do, yes, initially that's a taste of childhood, and then we go into feeling bad about it. So the real question is comforting yourself here. Comforting yourself because there's uncertainty, anxiety, loneliness, lack of physical touch, which some of you have brought up. Comfort does not come in the form of Cheetos. This is what I mean when I say, listen to what haunts you, what has always haunted you. If anxiety or loneliness or judgment about yourself, you're selfish, you're wrong, you're guilty, you're worthless, you're not achieving enough, if those are programs that you had going on before this virus, they are happening now. Now's your chance. I find that amazing. I find that actually feeling what haunts us, being in touch with what haunts us with support, is a chance to truly break free from compulsive eating. Who would ever turn to food if you knew how to comfort yourself? Well, now you have the chance to learn that. How? By acknowledging what's going on, by feeling it, by hooking up with a partner, a buddy, by doing the Women, Food, and God online course, by doing any one of the online meditations that are being offered now. There's so much online content, and a couple of you have talked about the overload of that and feeling like you're going from this Zoom call to that Zoom call to this online Pilates class to this yoga class to this big gathering. Well, I would also say to that, limit yourself. Figure out what you can take in. Don't have this time be a replica, except in front of your computer, of what your life was before. Decide, have the intention of what you actually really, really want from this time, and then find yourself a way to do that by getting support. And as Judy mentioned, we will be doing more of these, more online offerings in the next couple of months, so you can look for those as well. Okay, so I want to go on to the next question. Somebody says, I'm having a hard time looking at myself and accepting what I see. Although I love wearing sweats all day and not needing to wear makeup, it is a shock to my system to see what I look like every day as is. No blow-dried hair, no mascara or foundation, no cute work outfit, just me, bare, exposed, no mask. When the or it comes in, how can my husband possibly find me attractive? Thoughts creep into my head. What can I replace them with? How can my husband find me attractive? Well, it starts with you finding yourself, you being comfortable in your own skin. And more than that, to become aware of what you're telling yourself over and over and over again. Ick, how do you think you're going to respond to ick and Ugh, probably not so good. Judgment, and then eating. One more thing that I heard Elizabeth Gilbert say, she said she had 6 words for this time. Make your bed, period, 3 words, and get dressed. 6 words. Structure, some degree, little as it may be, of structure. So if you make your bed every day, if you get dressed, Matt was telling me yesterday that he had a friend who worked at home, and what his friend used to do was get up, shower, get dressed, walk out the door, turn around, and walk back in the door as a working person. So whatever structure works for you. The kind of food you eat would also be helpful to know as part of your structure. If you actually already know that Cheetos and Sara Lee icing and brownies and potato chips and Chef Boyardee raviolios make you sick, what do you do? How do you stop eating them? There is no answer there except your intention to take care of yourself. Except asking your body what it wants and then following through on that. Sometimes that's what it takes. It takes no. It takes the same no when you start judging yourself. No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to listen to you. You are not my friend, that judgmental voice. So let me see. Oh, so there's one last question about that, which actually applies to what I just said. How do we stop that inner voice from telling us that what we're eating is bad or wrong, or that we're bad or wrong, or that we look icky or yuck? That voice is going to be there for as long as you live. That voice can live in another part. If you think of yourself as living in a big house, and that voice is in a whole nother wing of the house with the door closed, yammering on all day long, it's yammering. You can't stop it. It's been going on most likely since you've been 4 years old. That's a big habit, but the less interested you become in it, the less loud it is. It just keeps on being in that room. So that voice is what I call the GPS from the Twilight Zone. You don't stop it, you just stop believing it. Or, as a therapist of mine once said to me, you see that voice as quacking, as Donald Duck. And if you see that voice as Donald Duck, of course, that's a very different story. Then it's just quacking away. But you do whatever you need to do. Read the chapter about the GPS from the Twilight Zone from Women, Food, and God. Okay, everybody. I'm going to start closing. I just want to see if there's anything that I really haven't covered. And of course, there are a lot of things I haven't covered, which I will do next time. But right now, one last thing. Somebody says, I am doing the things I know will keep my head in a good place, living in gratitude, reaching out to others via texting and FaceTime to see how they're doing. I'm doing yoga and meditation. I have a definite feeling of calm and gratitude. All that being said, I am eating everything that isn't nailed down. I'm determined not to judge myself for this. And I know I could be drowning in anxiety and depression, but would like to find a better place. I'm very familiar with your eating guidelines, but you'd never know it. Not even sure what I'm asking, but I just wanted to reach out. So thank you for reaching out. Thank you, Ellen, for reaching out. And congratulate yourself on the calm and the gratitude. We're going to end the call with that in a moment. And then ask yourself, what isn't calm? What's going on that's triggering the eating everything that isn't nailed down? First, you make room for it. You acknowledge it without judgment. You let that come in. And then you treat that feeling, as I said before, as a child or as something at the very least that needs your attention, that needs you to be with it. You know how to be with this. You all know how to be with this. You all know this. Make sure if you're by yourself that you have contact with at least 1 or 2 other people every day. Contact, heart-to-heart contact. Okay, so thank you for being with me. Thank you very much for being with me. I want you to take a minute now in yourself and ask yourself right now what you have enough of right now. What do you have enough of? There might be things that you don't have enough of, but you have enough of so many things. And when you start going into the anxiety of scarcity, that's a story. Come back. What do you have enough of? Feel that. Name it. You have enough breath right now. Enough sight. Maybe some of your answers are things like enough sheets, enough carrots, enough friends, enough capacity to listen and take in, enough intention to take care of myself. What do you have enough of right now? When you name it, and what the brain scientists say is that when you spend 3 breaths on what's positive, you start sculpting your brain, which changes your mind, which changes your brain. You establish a ground of goodness and calm so you can be that person in the boat. So your presence and calm and love can be contagious. My love to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a privilege for me. I love speaking to you. Be well, everybody. Be safe. And be at home in yourself. Until next time.